Welcome to Baddies for the People. I'm Rachel Pearl Jacobs.
And I'm Cheyenne Hunt.
And we're your resident baddies.
Let's get into it.
Welcome back, baddies. It's time for What's the Tea with me. And this week, I'm starting. I crashed out this week so hard. Like, first of all, I fell off of a curb when I was pushing this basket because it had this really heavy, like, thing of waters in it. And
basket, like a shopping cart?
Yes, it's a basket. And it flipped over and it took me down with it. And I broke my nail and I cracked my phone screen like a little bit on the end. But
how did it take you down with it? Why didn't you just let go?
These are great questions.
Yeah.
Okay. Anyway.
Yeah.
Then literally I was driving and I like kind of accidentally hit a parked car.
Okay. Well, at least it wasn't intentional.
Also, there's no dating news. I know you guys have been waiting with bated breath, you know, on the edge of your seat. Sadly, there's nothing to report. But the real tea with me this week is about my ADHD and something called rejection-sensitive dysphoria and perfectionism. So rejection-sensitive dysphoria is basically where you feel hyper rejected all the time, even if someone isn't actually rejecting you. But then when they do, or when you are rejected or receive like negative feedback, it's like crushing to your spirit.
I recently listened to somebody, like a professor who deals with ADHD, talking about how studies found like originally they thought that this was just really comorbid with ADHD, but then they found that it's actually like everybody who has ADHD has some degree of rejection sensitive dysphoria, which I thought was interesting. I did not know that.
And as an eldest daughter, of course, to cope with my rejection sensitive dysphoria, I tried to be as perfect as possible in all things. And it just makes me think about like all of the positive feedback that I receive. Like if something negative happens, it definitely like knocks me off my bike. And
it knocks you off the curb with your shopping cart.
Literally, and breaks my nail and cracks my phone screen.
Because you don't let go. Because you hold on to it.
Even though, like, you know, the injury is minor, the spiritual harm is deep, okay? Ultimately, all of this comes back to self-acceptance and recognizing that I can't be perfect and not everything is rejection. And I can't, like, avoid things to try to avoid being imperfect or avoid rejection. So yeah, basically this week was a crash with the basket and the car. Donate to the GoFundMe. What's the tea with you, Cheyenne?
The tea with me is that it cracks me up. You call it a basket when you're talking about a cart. A basket is what you pick up when you're like just getting a few things and you're going to put it like you're going to hand carry it. The cart is with the wheels.
Absolutely not. Absolutely. What do you call the remote control? Because it's a clicker.
Are you 85 years old?
Excuse me.
It's a remote.
This is blasphemy. Okay. Do you see how these Californians speak and behave?
So this week, golfer Rory McIlroy made history, completed what's called the Grand Slam. Essentially, he's one of a handful of golfers to have won every single major golf event. It took him years to do this. He had all four fairly quickly. That last five evaded him for well over a decade, but he got it.
Correction, 3. The Masters was the 4th that he needed.
Oh, well, whatever. See, I'm new to golf. The reason I'm new to golf is because I actually used to be a really big UFC fan, and then that whole universe got so deeply invaded by like Trump and MAGA that I couldn't stomach it anymore. And so I have slowly kind of moved into the golf fan vein. And Rory McIlroy is my favorite because I'm basic and I just go with who, you know, is popular and doing well, whatever.
I too was raised on the UFC. And
were you really?
Yes. Like literally ever since I was a very little kid. Like actually, interestingly enough, some of the people who fought in the UFC like stayed at my house.
I used to train with UFC fighters because I did jujitsu, so I knew a bunch of them.
Oh, that's weird. My dad was a black belt in jujitsu.
Whoa.
Like one of the first like American white dudes.
That's so random.
Yeah,
it's
I know.
also weird we've never talked about this.
I know.
Not the voice crack.
Not the voice crack. But wait, because there's an important golf thing to talk about. And this is the only thing I care about with golf. And that is Olympia, who is Serena Williams' daughter, who thinks that.
I saw this. She
yes.
thinks that all of the white men at the range are dads waiting to pick up their daughters because her dad brings her to golf all the time.
Yes.
I think it's so cute.
I'm here for it.
Well, I brought all of this up because I want to play a game with Rachel because I have a theory. And the game we're going to play is, which of these very famous golfers would you date?
Absolutely not.
Yep, we're playing it.
But
so
I have to be able to see them.
I'm going to show them to you.
It's not Tiger Woods because he doesn't embrace his blackness.
That's why.
Yeah.
Hot take, Tiger Woods is Asian.
Yeah, it's also true.
Hot take, Tiger Woods isn't Asian either. He made up some stupid ass word.
No, his mom is Chinese.
No, literally he does not embrace, he made up some weird, made up definition of what he is rather than actually embracing his heritage.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. I didn't think that was the rabbit hole we were going to go down, so I'm going to veer back off of it. Here we go. Number 1, this is Rory McIlroy. He is the one who just won the Masters and accomplished.
How old is he, bro?
He is
35.
35. He looks so. I know.
Stop.
Oh,
What if he watches this podcast?
Then I love you and congratulations. Number 2.
Wouldn't smash.
I've loved you longer, Rory.
Okay. Yeah, that's probably true. Number 2, Scotty Scheffler.
It's also a hard pass.
Guess how old Scotty is?
I don't care.
Okay. Number one. It doesn't matter if you're number 1 in the world. She doesn't care.
How old is he?
How old is Scotty?
37.
I think Scotty's 28.
Yeah.
I'm not
So what
hard and
is it
fast
about
on
golf that makes you age terribly? Is it the whiteness
It's
or
white men are not meant to be in the sun as much as they are in the sun. And also wearing hats all the time makes you go bald early.
Okay.
Okay, number 3. Colin Morikawa.
He's in the lead right now.
Okay, respectable. I feel that.
The Asian don't raisin. Skin is important, and so are genetics.
Number 4. Xander Schauffele.
What is he?
He's American, but he's French.
Are you sure he doesn't have some Blackistanian in him?
Oh.
You
Not
have
that I'm
Blackistanian.
aware of.
No comment.
Yeah, we're from Blackistan.
All right, and lastly, Bryson DeChambeau.
Oh, he's the top pick.
I was correct. I knew it. You know who Bryson DeChambeau is good buddies with?
Oh my God! Stop. This was a setup.
Donald John Trump. You know who he golfs with all the time? Donald Trump. You know who he's in YouTube videos with all the time? I knew she would pick the MAGA guy. I knew it.
Okay, so this is what happens when you're raised in Northern Virginia around no Black people and subjected to extreme racism from a young age. Okay, it warps your brain.
I told you. She has always said, no, I not only pick MAGA guys. There's one MAGA guy on that whole list. And she picked him. I feel that went exact. I bet Alex. I said, I bet you she picks Bryson. I would put all my money.
Bryson is a hot name, bro.
In Bryson's defense, he is handsome.
Yeah, what do you mean? He's easily the best, classically looking dude there.
I think Rory is very handsome. I also think Colin is the most classically handsome dude of all the people on that list.
Colin
Morikawa. He is the most classically
Is he
handsome.
tall?
No.
He is 5'8".
Ooh, yeah. I have to, solve for my genetic issues. The height challenge, so gotta be with the tall guy.
Okay, that's my tea. That was so satisfying.
I feel set up. I feel attacked.
Hoodwinked. Bamboozled.
Led
astray. Who said that? Ja Rule?
I have no idea, but I just can't even right now. And if this is the clip that goes viral, I'm going to be really mad.
Wow.
But also, I think that I'm hot enough to convert these maggots to the right path.
That's delusional.
Yeah, it is. I know.
Okay. Well, on that note,
Cut that out, Dylan.
For what made you cringe. Rachel, what made you cringe this week?
This week, my cringe is about jackass Jim Jordan. For everyone who doesn't know or missed his speaker run, he is a sexual assault accomplice. Now, what does that mean? That means that when he was the assistant coach at Ohio State and the team doctor was sexually assaulting football players and wrestlers, he was aware. And that people who were victimized in this way spoke out to him and raised the concern, and he silenced them is infuriating. So not only is it me that feels very strongly about this, but so does our good, never aging, handsome man, George Clooney, who produced this movie. Why did you make that face at me?
I had no idea where this was going, and I had no idea George Clooney was involved, so you caught me off guard. What movie?
It's a documentary that investigates Dr. Richard Strauss and his sex abuse scandal at the Ohio State University. The moral of the story is not only is George Clooney a hottie, but I really thought that Cheyenne was going to tell me he was also like some type of predator, because she likes to do that whenever I bring up celebrities. So basically, Jim Jordan is trash, and so are we as a society. We're doomed. But Cheyenne, what made you cringe this week?
This week, I'm cringing at the fact that Donald Trump has directly taken aim at the United States Constitution by saying that the White House does not intend to comply with an order of the United States Supreme Court, which was decided 9-0 against him and his administration. And yet somehow this is not something that everyone is talking about.
Bruh, I've been telling you this literally since we started this podcast.
Telling me what?
That he was going to do this.
Well, yeah, but now he's done it. And this is a direct assault on the constitutional separation of powers, the very basic presumption of how our government works. And yet this is not something that everyone is talking about. And the way that they're doing it is really what's making me cringe, because you have literal supervillain, gaslighter in chief, Stephen Miller, who gets asked a question about this court decision in the Oval Office. This decision is where the court ordered the White House to facilitate the return, that is the exact quote, of Kilmar Abrego Garcia, who was wrongfully deported to El Salvador. He is not a criminal. He was here legally, and they admitted in their court filings that they deported him wrongfully. And yet, when asked about this decision, Stephen Miller said to everyone in the White House and in front of all of these members of the press that the court ruled in favor of the Trump administration, and that their ruling actually said that no judge has the authority to order the executive branch to do anything related to foreign policy, which is so not at all what the order said. I literally cannot, it breaks my brain. He straight up not only lied, but concocted something brand new out of thin air. Once he did this, then all of the other junior gaslighters chimed in from the peanut gallery, like AG Pam Bondi, and Trump's Grinch-lipped press secretary, Caroline Leavitt, is up there all the time talking about how he's an MS-13 gang member and they don't have to bring him back, when in their own court filings, they've admitted he is not a criminal and he was wrongfully deported. So I'm cringing at the fact that the American public, the mainstream media, is not only talking about this. And I have a theory on why that is, but it blows my mind that they literally put on paper multiple times in multiple court filings that this was their up, that this is an innocent man. And then they will turn around and agents of the same administration will say that he's a gang member and that the Supreme Court has no authority. It's crazy. But my theory, by the way, or go ahead, crash out first, and then I'll return to my...
Just wait until he starts deporting citizens.
Yeah, which he said he intends to do.
He told El Salvador to build 5 or 6 more prisons. Come on.
Because he's sending homegrowns.
And the frustrating part of this is that I just found on the internet this post that keeps reiterating that Auschwitz was in Poland and not in Germany. And I feel like I'm late to the party, but I've never heard a more apt and timely comment.
Comparison for sure, right? And I saw someone making the same point, and they elaborated, and they didn't start killing people right away.
People always complain about me comparing Trump to Hitler, and I just don't really know why, because we are seeing the crash out in full color.
Yeah.
Yet we still refuse to acknowledge what's going on and act surprised.
Yeah. And I said earlier I had a theory why we don't see everybody talking about this all the time, and it's this. I think it's interesting to note that the Trump administration didn't directly attack the authority of the Supreme Court until he basically wrecked the economy and the stock market first. He did all of these unprecedented tariffs, destabilized global markets, and then after everyone was so consumed with the fact that half of their life savings was gone, then he was willing to say the Supreme Court has no authority over me and basically I'm dismantling the Constitution. I think that civil liberties are great, but when people are figuring out how they're going to feed their kids and pay their rent, they do not have the bandwidth to pay attention to constitutional law. They just don't. And I think that he is capitalizing on this moment right now and the insecurity that he's created. And that is a 100% fascist dictator move.
Well, this is Baddies for the People, reporting live. If Elon comes for us or Trump in the middle of the night, you know it's because of Cheyenne's latest call out.
Yeah, we're really not trying to get gulagged.
But I also feel like we're documenting history.
Yeah. So that's what I'm cringing at this week. And now we definitely need to shift. So it's time for the vibes. Rachel, what are you vibing on this week? And the vibes, by the way, is where we talk about the crossover between pop culture, politics, and the law. Rachel, what are you vibing on this week?
The vibes with me this week have to do with legal entertainment. Or maybe it's entertainment legal news.
I was going to say legal entertainment, like we're watching Suits.
No. I feel like legal entertainment also almost sounds like it's like borderline illegal. You know?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the sign that like strip clubs have outside is like legal entertainment.
Exactly.
Okay.
So our first stripper on the poll is Drake, and he is suing Kendrick Lamar. Why is he suing Kendrick Lamar? Because Kendrick Lamar keeps calling him a pedophile, and he's mad about it.
Yeah, he did it at the Super Bowl when he
didn't actually do it.
He didn't say the word.
He just implied that he likes them young, and he called him a pedophile everywhere else.
Yeah, he said at the Super Bowl, he said, certified lover boy, certified.
Wah, 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 wah. Okay, yeah. So that's the Drake news. And there's definitely more, though, because, of course, I have to on someone now in my vibes. So Harvey Weinstein, as we all know, ended up being granted a new trial in his sexual assault lawsuit. So it is now about to start again, and his lawyers are demanding all of these disability accommodations for Harvey Weinstein that I just think are bull. The team cited a number of health conditions the former mogul is suffering from, including chronic myeloid leukemia, diabetes, extensive coronary artery disease, and most recently, a misdiagnosed tongue infection. You, bro. You deserve to suffer. Like, I don't care.
The tongue infection one is so random.
And the last sexual predator that we're going to discuss on today's entertainment legal news is Diddy. He's gotten another superseding indictment, and it adds a couple more charges. But the real drama is that his attorneys are demanding 200,000 pages of discovery. And this is after they had a motion to continue the trial about 2 months, denied by the judge. For those of you who also don't know, Brian Steele, whose claim to fame is, getting Young Thug off from his RICO case, has actually now joined Diddy's legal team. And that motherfucker is still going to jail.
Yeah. I mean, they're just trying to stall right now. Like, they're just going to keep asking for more discovery. They're going to keep asking to delay. It's very common.
Yeah, but why? We all know that federal prison is way cushier than where he is right now, which is like a federal detention facility. Just go to prison.
Go straight to prison because he's delusional. He doesn't think he's going to prison.
I don't know, but I also saw his son in the stupid ass outfit he wore to court, and it just pissed me off.
Put a picture of it in there because I don't even know what.
I don't know if you guys realize this, but there are a couple places where you should wear a suit. Court is one of them.
Yeah, it is. No, it's a non-negotiable.
Showing up in some designer t-shirt and jeans is not cutting it. I don't care how much they cost.
Yeah.
And you know what? You have too much money to not invest in a stylist to properly
dress you for your dad's sexual assault trial.
That's crazy.
Well, that's what
they really do have a look for everything.
They do.
I'm also sick of Diddy claiming that these are just long-term consensual relationships he had. We all saw that video of Cassie. Do people like that was consensual?
You consensually dragged her by her hair, kicking and screaming back into a hotel room when she was running away.
After beating the out of her?
Yeah.
So my vibes are I'm still angry at sexual predators. And clearly that's what
that's your theme. That's
for this episode. Line. Yeah.
Noted.
So Cheyenne, are your vibes any more uplifting than mine?
My vibes are definitely not as heavy. What I'm looking at in pop culture this week that I find really interesting is Tate McRae has gotten a ton of criticism online for apparently announcing, or there's a leak that she is going to be collaborating with Morgan Wallen on his upcoming album, that they're going to have a song together on that album. I just think it's interesting because obviously Morgan Wallen is like just a controversy generator, going back to saying the N-word, throwing a chair off of the balcony of his bar and hitting some cops, walking out of SNL and saying, "Get me back to God's country," as if standing next to Bowen Yang is going to make him gay. I don't know. I just think it's interesting because the level of criticism that Tate McRae has gotten for the announcement of this collaboration hasn't been seen when any other significant male artists say that they're going to collaborate with him. And there's been Black artists. There's been other popular pop culture artists like Post Malone. He's done it, I think, 3 times. And the scale of backlash is just markedly different. And I think it's interesting that women seem to be held to this different standard. I'm not saying that like we should continue to platform people who are hateful. I'm just saying that like, why is it that women get more backlash and are held to a higher standard than men? Virtually always. That's my vibes. I've just been thinking about it and chewing on it, I guess.
Damn.
Well, with that, it's time for the deep dive. This week's deep dive is all about Tarifftopia. By now, I'm expecting everyone to have at least heard something about tariffs. And if you haven't, I'm not even sure how you're listening to this podcast because there's no way you have access to the internet. Tariffs are a core component of the Trump administration's economic policy, and over the past few weeks, the administration has rolled out a flood of executive orders imposing tariffs on entire swaths of the globe. These tariffs have been rolled out, rolled back, and paused in such a hasty and haphazard fashion that between the time Alex writes this deep dive and the time that we shoot, this will probably already be out of date. But what's actually happening? What are tariffs? And who is the administration targeting? Why are they doing this? And most importantly, how is this going to affect all of us?
So let's start with the easy question. What is a tariff? A tariff is a tax that's placed on goods that are being imported into the country. Goods from outside of the United States. So tariffs are typically expressed as a percentage that's based on the total value of the goods being imported. Tariffs are generally applied to countries we don't like or to specific products. So Trump has insisted on numerous occasions that it's the exporting party who pays the tariffs, but that's a f***ing lie. Despite the fake news from Trump, tariffs are always paid by the importer. They're paid by the consumer, the person who receives them, not the person who creates them. So this is going to shake out for us consumers in a couple of ways. One, either the company who paid the tariff will increase the prices of the products that they sell because they don't want to or outright can't afford the added expense. Or 2, if you had the product shipped directly to you, the shipping company will add a surcharge and that reflects the tariff because they're like the importer. This makes me personally really sad because as a DHgate girly, I feel personally oppressed.
As a what?
A DHgate girly.
What is that?
How do you not know what DHgate is?
I've literally never heard of this in my life. Enlighten me.
Have you heard of DHgate, Alex?
No, unless you're talking about DHL.
Bruh, DHgate is the god of Chinese manufactured goods.
Like Temu?
No, because they're not.
Oh,
They can actually be really high quality.
well, now I'm intrigued.
Also, for all of the designer wear that you don't want to pay designer prices for,
Are you about to say Quince?
hit the fence. No, DHgate.
Oh.
Quince doesn't have brands.
Yeah, but it's the same manufacturers.
Allegedly.
As all the luxury brands. Also, I'm not talking about Quince on here and giving free advertisement. I'm just leave this in and just bleep it all out.
In either case, Americans foot the bill. And if you're curious how this works in practice, here's an example. You order $1 million of butt plugs from a country whose exports are being subject to a 20% tariff.
I want to also say that this is a hypothetical where you're a small business owner, not an individual with a demand for $1 million worth of butt plugs.
I didn't put that in the example. It could be either.
Correct. Alex used anime pillows, and I think that's boring. So back to the butt plugs. Anyway, when your butt plugs arrive, you go to pick them up from the port of Long Beach. You know, that's actually the largest port in the country.
Is it really?
Yeah, I think so.
Not.
I might have made that up.
So.
I might have made that up.
Fake news, whatever. Liberals can do it too.
I'm like 90% sure that's true.
Thank you. See, I retained some random facts. Anyway, you get there and U.S. fascist Customs and Border Patrol tells you that you have to pay $200,000 more for your $1 million worth of butt plugs.
Yeah, for the 20% tariff. And this is not just hypothetical. I have a friend who works in a company that refurbishes used technology and then sells it. And a lot of what they do is importing like used iPhones.
I thought she was going to say used butt plugs,
Nope.
but
iPhones from like China, Japan, and then they refurbish them and sell them. And this literally is what happened. They got like they had $1 million order, and then Trump announced the tariffs, and 2 days later they got an unexpected $200,000 bill that their small business just had to like figure out how to come up with.
this is terrifying.
Yeah,
These tariffs are terrifying.
pun intended.
So the items that you thought were costing $1 million actually cost $1.2 million. So now you're a broke bitch and there's not you can do about it. The worst part is if you can't pay, these fascists will send your butt plugs back
Or they'll incinerate them,
or they auction them off.
and then you get with the bill for the storage of these materials while they sit there at the harbor before they figure out what to do with them. So either way, your small business is screwed.
You can't even buy your butt plugs in peace. The government is going to buy butt plugs for themselves and they aren't going to get tariffed. But you are going to have to suffer alone.
Butt plugless.
Unplugged.
I had to lighten this up because seriously, talking about tariffs is just such a vibe kill, and the ways that this is going to negatively impact us is so depressing. But you know what always cheers people up? Butt stuff.
Now that we know what tariffs are, what countries have the Trump administration placed them on? The short answer is almost all of them, but the longer answer is a bit more complicated.
Yikes.
Trump had initially imposed tariffs of varying degrees on a number of different countries, starting on March 6th with a 25% tariff on all imports from Mexico and Canada that were not covered by the USMCA trade deal, which is a North American trade agreement that he negotiated in his prior administration. So if you weren't good with that trade deal, you should have made a better one. These tariffs on Mexico and Canada later expanded on April 2nd and then included much of the European Union and part of East Asia. While these tariffs started with fully built cars, they'll expand into parts over time, which will impact domestic auto manufacturing. On April 5th, Trump imposed a 10% minimum tariff on nearly all countries. On April 9th, because just a few days after that 10% tariff, he announced a 90-day pause on almost all of the high tariff rates imposed previously, but maintains the blanket 10%. China is excluded from this pause and is hit with a 125% tariff.
It's racist. It is. This is racial discrimination.
It's more, I think more accurately, it is absolute nuclear war on U.S. small business owners. Remember how Rachel mentioned earlier that usually you put tariffs on countries that you don't like?
Pause.
What?
You never heard like pause?
No.
What? Dude, people say like pause whenever they say something that like may be considered like homoerotic. They'll be like pause.
What?
You guys have never heard this?
No.
Oh, I have.
Oh, okay. Well, I clearly just don't know.
Yeah, Cheyenne.
Sorry, I'm not in with the L's and the G's and the B's and the T's apparently.
Clearly not.
Okay. Anyway.
Also, it's not like a queer thing. It's more of like a homophobic.
Oh.
No, it originally was a queer thing. But then the homophobes tried to colonize it. And we reclaimed that.
Anyway, the point I was making is that usually you would exclude your friends and your allies from arrangements like this. Well, Trump is doing the opposite. And in this whole tariff pause thing, he's excluding Mexico and Canada from that pause. So they're still screwed. Then on April 10th, Trump increased the tariffs on China to 145%.
Pause. Wait, remember when we talked about gluten-free goods?
Sorry, was that like a pause, like a homoerotic pause?
No, it was a real
pause.
But pause, wait, because remember when we talked about gluten-free goods and about how they're like 183 times more expensive?
Percent?
Whatever, bro.
183 times more expensive is insane. I love that you did that again.
Anyway, this is literally saying that everything we get from China is now going to be what countries do threes like this? Some do threes like this and then some do threes like this. Anyway, some of the like 3 times as much, which is insane.
Yeah, so let's break that down a little bit. That means that for every dollar of product you import from China, you are paying an additional $1.45 to customs. So you are paying more to customs than what you actually paid for the good.
Wait, but I thought the tariff was on China, not on me.
Yeah, well, around and find out.
Joke's on us.
Then on April 11th, Trump paused tariffs on electronics like smartphones, computers, and chips.
Chips.
Like microchips. Curiously or not, this happened shortly after Jensen Huang, the CEO of GPU giant NVIDIA, attended a $1 million per plate dinner at Mar-a-Lago. If this sounds chaotic and arbitrary as you'd be right.
And imagine paying $1 million for unseasoned, dry-ass chicken.
100% that's what they had.
What the hell is going on?
Currying favor with the Trump administration, but curry is probably the wrong word because it implies that there were spices. So basically, tariffs are subject to change on a nearly daily basis, leaving businesses and consumers little to no time to react to or plan around these changing prices. There truly appears to be no method to the madness with these tariffs. Some were even applied to an uninhabited island that is literally only occupied by penguins. I know I said that there was no method to the madness, but that's not entirely accurate. There is one, although calling it a method might be generous. According to an article in The Verge, it appears that the Trump administration used an AI chatbot to determine their tariff rates. Quote, if you ask ChatGPT, Gemini, Claude, or Grok for an easy way to solve trade deficits and put the US on an even playing field, they'll give you a formula that accurately produces the tariff numbers suggested by the Trump administration. It isn't clear how the chatbots arrived at that formula, but it is abundantly clear that the administration has no idea what it's doing, so much so that they've resorted to the same strategy as an 8th grader cheating on their homework.
Wait, 8th graders can't even cheat on their homework with ChatGPT.
Yeah, it's so true. Yeah, they get detected now.
Like, what?
But the White House can.
But remember that this is the same ChatGPT that they used to, close all those government agencies? With Doge.
That they then had to roll back all those cuts because it left the agencies totally non-functional.
You know what? I have to give a shout out to my friend who is now selling progressive AI that they have trained to not be as racist and fascistic. And
that's sick.
Yeah, they're like selling it to campaigns and different nonprofit organizations to, try to pass on the great pieces of AI
without all of the automated inequality.
Yeah. AI stands for automated inequality. Jesus. Or it might be A1, like the steak sauce.
Yeah, it might be A1 if you ask Linda McMahon.
If you're anything like me, you're wondering, how does this affect me? And And as I mentioned
You're
earlier,
only interested in how this impacts you personally.
I have to speak the Republican language to connect with them. Okay?
Okay, got it.
Let me live.
Got it.
Even though they won't accept this message from a Black female.
Facts.
But as I said,
just like Bryson DeChambeau wouldn't accept you as a Black female.
bruh.
Don't sue me. I don't. This is parody. I obviously don't know if you're racist, Bryson.
It's just that you hang out with a bunch of racists.
I can only guess by your company, but I don't know. It's a joke. Jesus.
Hanging out with racists is never a joke.
Unless you want to date them.
No, it definitely deducts your hot points like at least 5. Like he should have had a MAGA hat on in that picture so I could have accurately evaluated.
Oh, Colin's in the lead.
Yeah, Colin Morikawa comes up from behind the lead.
We love to see diversity, equity, and inclusion.
Asian excellence.
Correct. Okay. So remember we were talking about how this impacts you. So tariffs will make imported goods more expensive. And I can't stress enough that the U.S. imports almost everything. Okay. We don't make here.
That was almost Donald Trump.
At all. Now, of course, you think that what I said was hyperbolic. So I'm going to list off some big ones. And I'm not talking about CONUS. According to the USDA, in 2023, the U.S. imported $19.7 billion with a B dollars of horticulture products like vegetables, fruits, and nuts. We love nuts from Mexico. Now, according to good old American company, American Apparel.
No,
It's not the
American
company.
Apparel. It's like a trade association.
God damn it.
I thought that when I saw it too. I wondered if that was going to trip you up.
So for everyone who may not have known this, the American Apparel and Footwear Association is not the American Apparel that makes apparel in America.
She just learned this.
Correct.
She flubbed the line. And
Also, I highly doubt American Apparel makes anything in America.
No, they do. They make all of their things in America, and then they sew the little worker who made it on their face. They sew their face on the tag.
The way you said that was really kind of disturbing. I don't know.
What do you mean?
They sew their face on the tag.
Well, they sew a likeness of their face on the tag to acknowledge the hardworking people who they pay a living wage to produce high quality clothing in the United States.
What is this? What is this ad? Did you get paid by American Apparel? Because share the payout here.
Obviously not. Skims can sponsor me though. Anyway, so 97% of the clothes and shoes sold in the United States are also imported. Even the ones from places that you think are actually made in America, look at the back of your tag. It probably says made in Vietnam.
Yeah, unless it has someone's face sewn onto it.
Correct.
Apparently it's not American made.
Correct. It's easy to distinguish. According to the Department of Commerce, which may not exist by the time this podcast episode comes out, China accounted for 95% of U.S. imports of ibuprofen. So now you're going to have a headache and period cramps. And don't forget, they also imported 91% of hydrocortisone. Also, this is kind of important because penicillin literally cures everything, but 40 to 45% of penicillin is imported. That's why we're not only going to have measles, we're going to have mumps, rubella, lockjaw. What does penicillin cure?
Also, those are all viral infections which antibiotics do not treat.
Well, you know what penicillin cures? Syphilis. Okay, so y'all are going to have sexually transmitted diseases.
There are increasingly antibiotic resistant strains of syphilis, so that might not even work soon.
Do you see how down bad we are? Do you see what's happening? Okay. Y'all are so dirty that now penicillin isn't even going to cure syphilis. And I mean, I have never had a sexually transmitted disease, so that personally doesn't impact me, but I see how you guys act. So
keep going.
Additionally, senior Senator Chuck Grassley cited a report that 80% of active pharmaceutical ingredients are produced out of the country, which I told you guys last week, or maybe I didn't, but I meant to.
No, you said it. It was either last week or the week before that the ingredients that make up our medications are not coming from the United States.
Yeah, so if we don't eat the rich, we're going to die.
We won't have anything to eat.
Yeah.
We import all of our food. We import all of our medication.
So, yeah, we're not going to have food or medicine or clothes. And I'm sorry, but I don't want to see most of you naked. You should, it's a pass. Even the good American homegrown food is not immune from Trump's tariffs. Trump placed a 10% tariff on potash, which is an important ingredient in fertilizer. So we can't even grow good, strong Americans without experiencing these tariffs. Oppression. Yeah, and also the farmers' equipment is increasing, the irrigation systems, basically everything costs more. And this economic reality of tariffs is an increasingly globalized economy.
It's also worth noting, too, that the last time Trump was in office, near the very end of his term, he started a little trial with tariffs that was mostly impacting U.S. farmers in a similar way, just less extreme. And there were multiple cases of farmers having their livelihoods so threatened that they killed themselves. This is dark stuff, and it's really something that deeply, deeply impacts folks that are the backbone of our country.
Just like all those immigrants he deported. And now they're trying to get other people to pick the food. Why are we even worried about the fertilizer not being available? There's no one to even pick the food to bring it to the grocery store.
Oh, no, there is. Remember, they're legalizing rampant child labor. So the kids can pick them. The kids yearn for the fields to pick the food with their tiny fingers.
Their tiny soft hands are great for not bruising tomatoes and strawberries.
This is too much. This is actually just too much.
Yeah.
Also, they're closer to the ground. So things like strawberries and blueberries, it's less backbreaking.
So if we haven't, beat a dead horse enough, what we're really trying to say is that everything is going to be affected because nothing is made in one place. We live in a globalized economy. According to Axios, with modern supply chains, a single component in a vehicle can cross the U.S. border between 6 and 8 times before final assembly.
That's crazy.
I know. So I want to give you guys a hypothetical. Imagine that you wanted your butt plugs to be sparkly and light up. Now, every time you add a feature, it has to cross the border. In the same way that your sparkly light up butt plug will end up paying tariffs multiple times, so do these car parts, because every time they cross the border, the tariff is being paid.
To clarify what Rachel meant there, let's say the silicone is made in Canada, but then it gets molded in the US, which is then sent to Mexico where they make the LEDs to make it light up, and then it is eventually sent back to the US for sale.
But you forgot the sparkles. It goes to Canada first.
For the glitter.
For the glitter and the bedazzling.
This doesn't sound like something that's safe for human use.
I mean, most products sold in the United States at this point aren't, because we have fired tons of our crucial Food and Drug Administration workers and, the people who, what's the agency when things are dangerous, they do the recalls?
It's not
Consumer Product Safety Commission.
Yeah.
Yeah. So when your kids' fingers keep getting chopped off in the stroller, blame Donald Trump.
Facts. So we've covered the domestic side, but the tariffs that are levied by the US are really only half of the picture. Other countries, understandably, don't like having tariffs placed on their exports because higher prices will reduce demand for those products. Ultimately, this costs them sales. As a result, this often leads to them placing what are known as retaliatory tariffs, and I'm sure you've heard a lot about this, on US products. This is basically what a trade war looks like. Tariffs aren't the only way that other countries fight back. Take Canada, for example, which has banned US alcohol from its shelves in many provinces. This is concerning for US liquor manufacturers, as Canada is the largest importer of US spirits.
That's kind of weird.
I know, I wouldn't have guessed that either. I guess it's just a proximity thing. Okay, we have to pause and acknowledge that Rachel and I took a dinner break and she got some kind of, I'm guessing, turmeric-based beverage.
Correct.
And for those watching us online, you're going to notice that her tongue and her teeth are now bright yellow. I'm sure turmeric is going to get tariffed. There's no way that that's produced domestically. So enjoy that golden milk latte. Anyway, getting back to retaliatory tariffs, the steepest we've seen thus far has been China's, which placed a 125% tariff of their own on U.S. goods. One of the most obvious impacts of this has been on the U.S. soybean farmers. If you didn't know, the U.S. exports about $12.8 billion worth of soybeans to China every year. That's a lot of soy milk and tofu.
Wait, do soybeans make soy sauce?
Also that, yes.
To be clear, though, most of it is used as animal feed.
Was that like casually racist to say?
I mean,
a lot of soy milk and tofu. It's definitely going for like cattle.
Yeah. I mean, I'm sure it's used for that too. But as the Chinese middle class has grown wealthier, they've developed an appetite for meat that they couldn't afford a generation ago, and so
they're like the tofu.
Yeah, soybeans have become U.S. soybeans have become a big part of their agricultural sector.
So getting back to soy, like we talked about, we export a ton of soy to China. About a quarter of all soy produced in the United States, actually. Farms run on very slim margins and are often heavily indebted to these equipment manufacturers like John Deere. That's a whole other episode we could do, is the John Deere racket and the way that they take farmers for a ride.
Well, do you know that we live in a capitalist system that thrives on the exploitation of people?
I do. John Deere knows, and they are the exploiters. So this all started with John Deere, and that gets us back to the point that the margins of farmers are incredibly thin because, in part, of that exploitation, and thus they can be extremely sensitive to any disruption in sales. And if the prices of US soybeans increase in China as a result of this ridiculous trade war, it may cause them to buy less or take their business elsewhere to countries like Brazil.
A soy boy, who Cheyenne won't let me say is low T because he's a soybean farmer in Kentucky who voted for Trump, urges the president to make a deal with China before it threatens the livelihood of himself and others like him. So just so we're on the same page, this low-T soy boy voted for Trump, and now that it's going to negatively impact him, he wants a change.
Are we surprised?
I said low-T. Anyway, also, I want to note that it's soybeans now, but if this trade war extends and intensifies, we can see similar disruptions to other U.S. businesses that similarly depend on exports. So tariffs, particularly ones with undefined terms, are subject to change on a daily basis, just like relationships with undefined terms.
Facts.
But these present a significant challenge for businesses to navigate, just like human beings. Now, I want you to imagine that you're a construction company, because apparently I can't talk about butt plugs anymore. And you're bidding on a contract to build a house. How are you going to be able to bid confidently knowing that the price of materials could change any day? This could also apply to a butt plug construction manager. How are they going to produce the butt plugs if the materials that make the butt plugs could change any day?
I hope that that's a job title on someone's W-2.
Butt plug construction
manager.
Yes. If you are a butt plug construction manager,
let us know.
Let us know. For real. Like, we're trying to learn about all the jobs.
We love you. We'll really highlight you. This is not some micro.
I guess Cheyenne loves you. I don't know what that's about. But anyway.
Because all labor is dignified.
Yeah, sure. But you said you love the butt plug maker.
Yeah, I do. I love their labor. Because all labor is dignified.
Okay. Problems like this exist across the economy. Businesses are afraid to invest in such an uncertain environment. This uncertainty itself can ultimately become a cost because businesses raise their prices to compensate for future risk. Furthermore, if this trend continues, businesses may cut back on investments entirely, which means economic stagnation, also known as erectile dysfunction, when your gets stuck on the down. This is going to cause
like constipation.
Well, yeah, that too.
That also means lost jobs, lower profits, for all small businesses.
Which, despite what the Trump administration says, is what I think they actually want, to drive a large percentage of the American populace into poverty so that they can use and abuse them. This economic hardship is the opposite of what the Trump administration proposes these tariffs will accomplish. So this is just another thing that he lied about. And that begins the final point of this deep dive. Why tariffs?
So we've talked about what are tariffs. We've talked about who are impacted by tariffs. But now it's time to talk about why tariffs.
Because Trump is a terrorist.
A tariff terrorist.
Yeah, so explain to me his argument.
Trump's arguments for tariffs are twofold. The first is to increase the amount of tax income the government is able to raise.
Wait, but I thought he cut taxes on all his billionaire buddies. Are you telling me that the butt plugs are going to go up in price because he wanted his billionaire buddies not to have to pay taxes?
Well, it's also funny because he's repeatedly said they're not a tax, but he knows that he needs to increase tax funding. The second argument is that the tariffs will encourage new investment in U.S. manufacturing, leading to a sort of reindustrialization, thereby creating jobs.
What? This just sounds ridiculous.
It's definitely delusional for a number of reasons. It's this second point that's worth picking at a little bit and really kicking the tires, because it isn't clear that such a reindustrialization is even possible in the United States. Not to mention whether tariffs are the vehicle to achieve that at all.
Wait, when we say reindustrialization, wasn't the Industrial Revolution a time of horrible child labor practices and people like getting their fingers and arms and legs caught in machines and having these heinous injuries?
And also like the birth of the modern climate crisis.
Oh, but also weren't there like a lot of clothing factories that like caught on fire and like, oh
yeah.
my.
The triangle shirtwaist fire.
I was trying to find the name of it and I knew it was like something like that. I was like shape, shirt, body part, like my brain. Triangle shirt waist. Got it.
Like the game of charades.
Yeah. I'm glad you got there and I didn't have to try. The core of Trump's theory here is the idea that products manufactured overseas are much cheaper, in part due to the lower labor costs, thus making American manufacturing non-competitive. If imported goods were more expensive due to tariffs, that would strengthen domestic manufacturing by allowing it to compete on price. While there is a kernel of truth to this, much of the labor-intensive sectors of manufacturing have been offshored by corporations who sought to exploit cheap labor elsewhere. But that isn't the only reason that manufacturing jobs have dwindled. Harvard economist Robert Lawrence attributes the decline in U.S. manufacturing to an increased production capacity that came from processes becoming more efficient through automation. Basically, we can make more stuff with less people. In fact, according to an article in the Financial Times, even though U.S. manufacturing jobs have decreased over the past 40 years, U.S. manufacturing output has actually increased. This trend doesn't just apply to the U.S. either. Economist Richard Baldwin analyzed OECD data and found that global manufacturing jobs peaked in 2013 and have been decreasing ever since. So there aren't many jobs to bring back because AI and automated robots are taking over. So can tariffs at least bring back some US manufacturing?
Wait, she means they're taking over manufacturing, not that they're taking over all jobs.
Well, debatable.
Bruh, it's not. You can't have AI make this podcast. We're irreplaceable.
I mean,
to the
you
left,
could,
to the
it'll
left.
just be
Oh.
and sometimes this market increasingly is tolerant of just stuff. So back to my original question. Can these tariffs bring back US manufacturing? The answer is probably not, for a few very important reasons. The first is that it's highly unlikely tariffs would even last long enough to create a change in corporate behavior. Already, we've seen pullback from the Trump administration on some of these tariffs, and even if those hold, it's unlikely the next administration would maintain them. This is important because increasing manufacturing is a long game that involves building plants, training employees, and developing expertise, a process that could take years, if not decades. So basically, corporations are unlikely to undertake such a costly endeavor when they can just wait it out. According to financial analyst Dan Ives, Apple would need to spend $30 billion over the course of 3 years to move just 10% of its supply chain into the United States. Why do that when they can just wait?
I'm not spending any more on an iPhone or any Apple products. Like, I'm going to buy more, but like, I don't want the price to go up.
Oh, well, just you wait, because an analysis by Forbes Business found that even if we were to be able to onshore Apple's production, a cost of an iPhone, if it was made entirely in the United States, would be somewhere between $30,000 and $100,000. So the second reason that companies are highly unlikely to bring back manufacturing to the United States is that the tariffs themselves may make it harder for them to build more factories in the United States. As I just mentioned, onshoring is an incredibly expensive and capital-intensive endeavor. If companies are paying enormous tariffs and also operating in an uncertain economic climate, they're going to be slow to do the kind of big spending to build manufacturing facilities in this country.
But wait, do Americans even want these jobs?
No, basically. Let me skip to the end and then I'll explain. A survey by the Cato Institute in 2024 found that only 1 in 4 Americans believed that they'd be better off working in manufacturing. It's not just survey data that makes this point. The lived reality shows this too. According to the U.S. Chamber of Commerce, at the start of 2024, there were still over 600,000 unfilled manufacturing jobs. How are we going to manufacture more if we can't even fill the jobs that we have right now? It certainly won't be with immigrants under this administration. So what are we going to do? I'm not trying to say that onshoring manufacturing is a bad thing.
I am.
I think that there are potentially valid economic and national security reasons to strengthen U.S. manufacturing, particularly in sections like semiconductors. My whole point is that onshoring strategic production is great, but there's no universe where horribly expensive tariffs that gut the budgets of American families are the way to do that. The Biden administration tried a different approach to onshoring with the CHIPS Act, which gave financial incentives to chip manufacturers to build facilities in the US. This led to Taiwan Semiconductor, the world's largest manufacturer of semiconductors by far, beginning production on a massive facility in Arizona.
Didn't Trump? No, sorry.
Were you going to say, didn't Trump roll that back?
Yeah.
Because yes, he did. So all this talk about wanting to onshore manufacturing, and he rolled back the part of chips that actually got that done.
Also, like I think in terms of onshoring, like the most important thing from like a national security standpoint is the onshoring of semiconductor foundries. And it's noteworthy that one of the things that got exempted from the tariffs was tech production, which is like the very thing that we should be trying to onshore.
Also, can we define for our dear listeners what a semiconductor is?
It's the that goes in computers.
Yeah. Thank you.
It's the stuff specifically that makes your devices like very smart.
Also, if you guys are wondering like why semiconductors are so important for national security, it doesn't just go in your iPhone and your laptop. It goes in your cars, military vehicles, the guidance systems and missiles, satellites, the servers that run the internet.
Yeah, lots of super critical functions.
So basically, the Trump administration and its goals are a scam because they're undoing the exact things that seem to promote what they claim to want. Trump and his lackeys are just using and abusing this market volatility that they introduced to inflate their own wealth at the cost of the average American's 401k and pension. So Cheyenne, I guess we answered your question. The reason we have all of these tariffs is because Trump wants to make his rich buddies richer and the poor poorer.
One of the other things I wanted to mention that I just didn't find a great time to interject here is the fact that there are a lot of unforeseen consequences to these tariffs. Specifically, the fact that, you know, a lot of the things that we need to invest in green climate energy are going to be massively marked up by these tariffs because they're produced out of the country. And so from your solar panels to your electric car batteries, it's going to get harder to invest in a clean climate economy. And we're going to see backsliding even more so than we already are on our climate goals. It's just deeply disheartening.
So what you're saying is the tariffs will have us not only metaphorically cooked, but literally cooked.
Yeah.
All right.
Yep. Roasted, in fact. So with that, this has been a deep dive on tariffs, and it is time to leave you with our rent-free. Rachel, what's been living in your head rent-free this week?
On April 17th, body cam footage was released that showed officers shooting within 12 seconds of exiting their vehicle.
Holy.
Who did they shoot? A nonverbal autistic boy with cerebral palsy. They shot him through a chain link fence while he and his family were outside barbecuing. They didn't take time to assess the situation. They didn't listen to the cries of the family and the surrounding neighbors who knew that just because this boy was holding a knife, he was not a threat to anyone. So he had fallen down. When he got up, the police, being the crash outs that they are, yelled incoherently different orders at him. And as he was staggering, not because he was intoxicated, but because he had cerebral palsy, they shot him 9 times. He didn't die immediately. This happened on April 5th, and he was taken off life support on April 12th. During this time, he had to get multiple surgeries. He had one of his legs amputated. It was just terrible. This whole thing is just terrible. And I rant about police all the time because we are paying the government to kill people we love, and we have not done anything about it. This continues to happen. And I don't know what to tell people. I can't be like, don't call 911, because if there's a fire, I'm not putting that out. And I'm damn sure not giving someone life-saving care like an ambulance will. But if the police show up, you're cooked. So yeah, this week was a lot of uncomfortable realities for me. And it is being tied up by another heinous shooting that's caught on body cam. Cheyenne, what's living in your head rent-free?
First of all, that's awful, and I hadn't heard all the details of that story, so thank you for sharing it, because that's just irredeemable. Separately, the way you say ambulance is hilarious.
I also heard that, but I didn't want to say anything because I'm like, it's a pretty serious moment.
Ambulance.
I used to say ambulance.
Oh, that's even better.
Do you guys remember that like old video where it's like somebody call an ambulance?
That's what it made me think of immediately.
When I was really little, I talked with a Boston accent. I'd be like, the Floya. And close the doya. And like, yeah.
So did I, but that's because my family's from the East Coast.
Yeah, I mean, I was from the East Coast too, but not Boston.
No. Okay. I am pulling a Rachel and I want to hear myself talk, and really it's because I have 2 things to say. Number 1, pastor and Christian nationalist Andrew Isker stated on a Manosphere podcast this week that when he goes to the airport, he refuses to walk through the body scanner because he thinks that those rays will make him attracted to men. And so instead, because he doesn't want to be gay, he requests a pat down, which is always given by someone of the same sex. So there's nothing like getting your literal balls fondled to prove no homo. That's not my real rent-free. I just like had to bring it up. My actual rent-free, I was going to talk about Senator Chris Van Hollen going to El Salvador and actually showing what it means to fight an oppressive regime
and be a representative of the people.
Yeah, and go and demand that he see one of his constituents who was abducted. But really, that was my whole point, is that that's what fighting looks like. That's the bare minimum. Like, I am happy to have him in the Senate, and they should all be doing that. Bare minimum. And the fact that he went alone is kind of astounding to me. That was at great personal risk to his safety.
Absolutely.
And it's absurd that he went by himself.
But there's something notable about this, because they didn't let him go into the, concentration camp to visit
No, but at the same time he was there, did you see that they let right-wing influencers in to film videos, like propaganda videos about how these are the most dangerous people they've ever seen and this is an excellent facility? Yeah. So the whole thing is just disgusting. And we should be really disturbed by the use of propaganda here and the lack of transparency. But really, now that so much has happened this week, my real rent-free, what is actually like living in my head rent-free for multiple days, is the fact that we grew up as part of the first generation raised doing school shooter drills in kindergarten. And there's something really surreal to me after what we saw in Texas and FSU in the last couple of weeks, that this has now become a multi-generational American rite of passage. The next generation of kids after us is experiencing this terror and this horror too. And I just always, maybe naively, believed that before that day came, we would overcome our cowardice, our ineptitude, and we would enact what we call so often common sense gun reforms. But instead, we have a whole new generation of kids growing up in literal terror of being slaughtered
by
in their
white
classrooms where they should feel safe. Because to our representatives, the dollars of the NRA are worth more than the lives and the safety and the mental well-being of our children.
But not just our children. Like, that's the part to me. Like, I'm traumatized thinking about kids who experienced and lost friends in a school shooting and then experience a school shooting again.
Right. She's talking about the kids in Parkland that were at Parkland High School during that first mass shooting and are now students at FSU.
But this isn't the first time that like they've talked about these multiple instances of children experiencing multiple school shootings in one educational career.
No, it's not. I mean, there was also something here in Southern California where there was a shooting at a school, and then a lot of those people no, it wasn't a school. There was a thing in California where there were people who were at the Route 91 music festival that was shot up, and then they were at the country bar that was shot up not that long after that.
I just want to emphasize again, we know who these shooters are. They are white. They happen to be also white supremacists.
Yes.
But they're white men. Yeah. So we need to look at ourselves, if you're a white man, and ask, what is going on in this oppressive-less world where I am a benefactor of all things without any effort that entices someone to shoot up a public place?
Yep.
To take multiple lives.
And so I think for me, I now realizing that this has become a multi-generational American rite of passage, have been stuck with the rent-free of your thoughts and prayers have literally never meant fucking less. Ever. It is time for action, and it's time to demand action or shut the up. I don't want to hear about your thoughts. I don't want to hear about your well wishes. I want to hear about what you are doing to demand better. And if you're an elected official, I swear to God, if you say thoughts and prayers, we're going to riot. Because that is not your job. If I want someone to pray for me, I'll go down to the church. I want you to do your job.
I think this also like applies to my rent free because we've seen so much justification of why the police commit these violent acts or what these victims should have done differently. But what justification is there for shooting a nonverbal autistic teen with cerebral palsy?
Yeah.
Where is the line? Because it seems like the little humanity that the United States had is getting thrown out with the bathwater and the baby.
Yeah, as we gear up to deport U.S. citizens. Oh, yeah. As we imprison 24-year-old women for having miscarriages. It has become an incredibly cruel country.
I mean, I think it's always been an incredibly cruel country. It's just, like I said, this is not the shit I signed up for. This is not what you signed up for.
No.
We did not go through, however, what's 12 plus 7?
We did this last
19.
time.
God damn it. We did not go through 19 years of education to be told that, oh, that entire Constitution that you had to slave away. Oh, that was no.
Okay. The entire Constitution that you worked really hard studying.
Yeah. That the entire system of law that we worked so hard studying is now being on by an orange man.
Yep.
Baddies, if you're blown, join the club.
Yeah. And I did see something heartening that I'll leave you with, which is that studies of moments of historic change and toppling oppressive regimes have found that generally committed involvement of 3.5% of the population is generally all it takes. That is the critical mass to topple one of these regimes and really institute change. And some of the protests that we've seen across the country recently, including the hands-off protests, were estimated at about 1.5% of the population in some way getting involved or speaking out about it. And so there is a very real world where we can make a difference and make change. And do not succumb to hopelessness and nihilism. That is what they want, and that's what they're betting on. And so we have to continue to get loud. We have to take the rest that we need so that we can stay in this fight for the long haul, because this is a marathon. It's not a sprint. But I also want to leave you with the fact that, you know, I'm a numbers person. I like, not literal numbers, but
yeah, I was gonna say, you're like the opposite of a numbers person.
I'm an analyst. I like the facts. I like the logistics. I like the details. I need the evidence, and we're not that far off statistically from a critical mass. So keep fighting and keep spreading the word. That's what we're gonna do, and that's what we're gonna do when we see you next week. So we'll see you next week, baddies.
Bye, baddies.
Bye.